Hello, everyone. My name is Mia Tyson, and the topic that I will be covering today is the medieval era, or as some others would say, the Middle Ages. I chose this topic because I find it very interesting, and I love that a wide range of events took place in this era that can be discussed. The medieval period is relevant in humanities because during this era there was an increase in religious dispute, changes in European culture, and visual and literary arts prosper. These all play a role in the beauty of humanities. So you ask, what exactly is the medieval era? This era was divided into three main periods, which included the early Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages, and the Late Middle Ages, which also introduced the early Renaissance. It lasted from the 5th to the 15th century and started with the fall of the Roman Empire and ended with the beginning of the Renaissance in the 14th century. After the fall of Rome, the culture and political structure around Europe changed and the Western Empire was split into different kingdoms. Later, there began to be a lack of a strong central government in the Western Europe. The early Middle Ages lasted from the 5th to the 10th century. After the fall of the Roman Empire happened, the period of the medieval era began. During this century, Islam began to grow and develop, many forms of changes in religion took place, and the Holy Roman Empire was created. There were many events that took place in this period that caused changes throughout Europe. This being the start of the Middle Ages, many things happened at once. In the beginning, the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian I established a code of law in the early 500s during his rule. This code of law was made because Justinian thought that the empire's legal system needed to change. It discussed many different topics such as slavery, trade, marriage, and business. He attempted to reunite the Eastern and Western empires but failed to do so. This code was Justinian's most important contribution to Europe. The religion of Islam was established in 610 by Prophet Muhammad and it spread through trade, military conquests, and missionaries. It quickly became one of the main religions in Europe during the Middle Ages along with Christianity. In 726, Roman Emperor Leo III destroyed religious icons. This is known as iconoclasm, and there were consequences for people who supported images that worship icons. Emperor Leo ruled the Byzantine Empire during the Middle Ages, and after banning religious icons, the way Byzantine art was shown changed. Arts were created with figures and shapes that weren't directly related to religion so that no problems occurred. Next, Muslims began to invade and conquer land from the south, but these invasions were stopped by Charles Martel in 732. This was referred to as the Muslim conquest, and they conquered many lands including Egypt, Iran, and Iraq. The victory at the Battle of Tours by Charles Martel is what stopped the spread of Islam into Europe, and it gave power to the Franks who later established the most powerful Christian kingdom in early medieval Western Europe. Later, in the 8th century, Charlemagne, who was also Charles Martel's grandson, was crowned Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and began his reign. He spread Christianity and began the Carolingian Renaissance. This was the first medieval Renaissance, and it had a big impact on the culture of Western Europe. The High Middle Ages was the middle of the medieval period, and it lasted from the 10th to the 13th century. During this period of the era, the European population increased because of the better agricultural techniques, better weather, and a big decline in slaveholding. The Crusades started, which was a series of religious wars between the Christians and the Muslims. Feudalism had a significant amount of growth, and the Magna Carta was signed by King John in 1215. Anglo-Saxons were members who ruled territories in the beginning of the High Middle Ages. Their reign came to an end after William the Conqueror of Normandy invaded England and took control. The Anglo-Saxon period lasted for about 6 centuries before the Battle of Hastings in 1066 occurred, which resulted in them losing their ruling power. After this began the era of the Norman rule, which resulted in an increase in change, and the populations gradually increased. The Normans also imposed the feudal system. In 1054, the Eastern and Western churches split between Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. This is known as the Great Schism, and was an effect of the long-lasting rivalry between Rome and Constantinople. It allowed us to see the differences in thoughts between the East and West, but it affected medieval life by weakening the church. The feudal system began and grew quickly and strongly during this period of the Middle Ages. Feudalism emerged as a result of the invasions and because Europe had a weak central government. During the Middle Ages, this was a hierarchical system of rule that was based on land being exchanged for military protection. It lasted until the late Middle Ages and collapsed due to reasons such as diseases and wars. The First Crusade began in 1096 and lasted until 1099, and it was caused by the expansion of Islam. It It was organized by Western European Christians, and their goals were to stop expansion, recapture territories, and reclaim Christianity for the Holy Land. Unfortunately, they did not achieve these goals and lost the wars to the Muslims. These crusades also helped bring an end to feudalism because it weakened its power structure. The Magna Carta was issued in June of 1215 and was written to prevent King John of England from being too powerful. It was the first written document in European history and protected the rights of people. This is one of the positive events that occurred during the Middle Ages. The last period of the medieval era is the late Middle Ages. This lasted from the 10th to the 15th century, and at the end of the period was when the Renaissance began. England and France went to war, which was referred to as the Hundred Years' War, the Great Famine, the spread of the Black Plague, which killed many of Europe's population, the decline of feudalism, and lastly we're given insight into how the arts and culture throughout Europe developed in many ways. These events ended the medieval era and showed us that life during this era was dangerous and how hard it was from beginning to end. The Hundred Years' War is one of the first events that happened in the start of the late Middle Ages. War was declared on France by Edward III because he felt that he should be king, and it lasted for more than a century and ended with France taking the victory. This war caused a big decline in trade and destroyed the feudal nobility. As if the war was not a lot, the Great Famine and the Black Death also took place in the upcoming years. The famine of 1315 caused many people to die of starvation and diseases because they were too weak from not getting food. The rain impacted the supply of food in Europe and rotted the crops, which caused a lack of food supply and eventually led to famine. Prices of everyday items rose and people were no longer able to afford them. About 30 years later, the Black Death hit, and between 75 and 200 million people died. It spread to several parts of the world by rats and fleas on the clothes of travelers. The Black Death brought a decline to feudalism because people left to escape the plague, and the drop in population from deaths caused a major labor shortage. If we skip forward about 100 years, then comes the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg. This invention allowed people to produce books quickly and less expensively and led to the spread of knowledge and literacy around Europe. This was a positive transition in Europe and led to a need for fresh ideas and innovations. One of the last events that I would like to discuss is the capture of Constantinople, also known as the fall of Constantinople, which happened at the end of the late Middle Ages. This capture from the Ottoman Empire resulted in the end of the Byzantine Empire and also the end of the Roman Empire. It allowed for Ottoman expansion in Eastern Europe and removed the defense against Muslim invasion. This event was a major turning point in the European history and influenced the start of the Renaissance. During this research process on this topic, I learned a lot about the Middle Ages. There were 3 different periods of this time, and different events took place in each one that made them unique. Life during the Middle Ages was harsh, and the people during this time faced many challenges that were not expected. I began to understand how much was endured in medieval Europe, from the fall of Rome to the many wars to the Black Death. Daily life only began to improve during the start of the Renaissance. This era is the foundation of many modern European countries and shows how human expansion occurred over the years. This was an interesting and compelling topic of conversation, and besides what I included in my presentation, there is so much more to learn about the Middle Ages. We've had a great discussion over this topic, and I appreciate you all for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And here is my references for all the sources that I use to explore my topics, and I appreciate all of you for listening. Thank you.